what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It is Monday, October 7th here. And boy, I got to tell you what a weekend we have had. If there was something that could go wrong, it went wrong. And for like the first time in the 3 weeks since we got to Indiana, the Weather Channel was absolutely right. We got thunderstorms pouring on in while we're trying to get all of our furniture into our new domicile, and we just shove it all in there, and it looks like some of the stuff may be missing. We have to continue, we have to finish the inventory there. Then we get up this morning and we get reminded that they're cleaning the carpets in 2 of the rooms today, which means we now have to go back into those rooms and drag out all the stuff so the carpets are available to be cleaned. And then as if to add insult to injury, my Hyundai died this morning. Now, it turned out to be a very minor issue. There wasn't enough water in the battery, and the car is running, and so we got that going. But you know, it's one of these times when you realize that one of the blessings of living in Indiana is that there's a lot of very substantial trees that you can beat your forehead against when the occasion calls for it, which it certainly did this weekend and probably after the show today as well. All righty, we have got a lot to talk about today. Ken is actually in our control room today. Mike is out doing something. Our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. So call on in with the story of what an epic disaster your weekend was, and we'll all sort of share our misery here together here. Speaking of misery here, what is this guy thinking? Okay, Trump has given a green light for another Turkish invasion. Now, Erdogan wants to take a 30-kilometer deep strip, including the M4 highway, which runs west to east in that area. But the border area Erdogan marked is quite populated, with some 850,000 people living there. So what the heck is going on? What is Trump thinking here? And it gets even more bizarre than that. U.S. troops will withdraw from northeast Syria to avoid a Turkish assault. Now, this is going to be getting kind of interesting here, because don't forget, for the last several years, the United States has supposedly, emphasis on supposedly, been supportive of the Kurds against the Syrians. Yes, we will protect you. We will take care of you. Now, all of a sudden, the U.S. troops are pulling out. And the Kurds are, to put it delicately, annoyed. Where are you going? You said you were going to take care of it. Well, yeah, no, what can we tell you here? So U.S. troops have begun withdrawing from positions in northern Syria, paving the way for a Turkish operation against the Kurds. So what the heck is going on? Is Trump trying to keep Turkey from pivoting toward Russia because they've been making sounds like that? Is Trump just simply sick and tired of dealing with the Kurds? But I got to tell you, it's feeling almost like you could see the entire region explode. And the reason I say that is because the Russian army has put up a bridge in record time to deploy heavy arms and aid across the Euphrates River. So now they're pouring on into the area, and apparently the bridge is 210 meters long. It can serve 8,000 cars a day. It can support heavily armored vehicles like tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and multiple launch rocket systems. So it's just getting crazy there. Meanwhile, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has reiterated Russia's position, which stresses that all foreign military forces that are present in Syria illegally must leave. Gee, I wonder who he's talking about. Don't suppose it could be us, right? I mean, we have the legal right to be in Syria because Assad was gassing his own people. I think that, of course, that's what Peskov is saying. All of these soldiers, including the Americans who are there inside Syria, must leave. So they're building this huge bridge across the Euphrates to come into that part of the territory. At the same time, they're telling us to leave. Are we going to find ourselves at war with Russia? I certainly hope not. I think it would be a really stupid idea. But it does seem like we're headed that way. Now, apparently, Senator Lindsey Graham, who is usually one of President Trump's most vocal supporters, has lashed out at the decision to withdraw the U.S. troops from northeastern Syria ahead of an imminent incursion by Turkey. So basically what they're saying is, yes, Turkey is going to invade. We're going to go away and let them do it. We're going to let Turkey go on in to the Kurdish territories and just kill everybody. What the heck? Why not? Nothing better to do here. Amazing. Okay. Turning to our domestic politics, of which there seems to be so much going on here. The deep state attorney linked to Schumer and Hillary confirms he is now representing multiple whistleblowers in connection to the July 25th Trump call. Of course, we don't know how many of these whistleblowers are for real. We know there's reason to suspect that the first one is a phony. And because the American people are very suspicious of the phonies, they're coming on out and saying, no, we've got hundreds of whistleblowers. We have thousands of whistleblowers. We've got 1 million whistleblowers that are going to convince you Donald Trump deserves to be impeached here. There's some speculation out there that John Bolton is the second whistleblower, and this is part of his revenge tour. This is Bolton on revenge. I'm on my revenge tour. And the other day, I think it was Friday, came on out there with a statement saying that, you know, now that he'd been fired from the White House, he was perfectly free to say anything he wanted. That is not true. When you go to work for the government, you are required to sign non-disclosure agreements. So no, Bolton does not have the right to just go on out and open his yap, although that's not going to stop him on this one. Apparently over at MSNBC, they're complaining that Joe Biden is furious that the media is reporting on the corruption that Hunter Biden was taking part in over there in Ukraine. See, now it's coming on out. This stuff really did happen. Apparently it happened quite a bit. Apparently Hunter Biden made a lot of money playing with all of this. All right, Obama's judge Amy Berman Jackson orders the White House to preserve records of Trump's dealings with foreign leaders. I think that's a violation of the separation of powers doctrine. And apparently a judge has now ordered Trump to turn over 8 years of tax records. And again, I think we may be looking at violation of the separation of powers doctrine. I'll tell you this, Trump may be setting up the Democrats for another big bear trap. I mean, because if you look at all the missteps they made, you had Russiagate, Spygate, had This latest one, if they get the Trump tax records and it turns out there's nothing in there, that's it for the Democrats for next year. And even if there's something in there, I think most people are probably looking at it and saying, it's fishing expeditions. They're not investigating crimes. They're basically just trying to find a reason to get rid of this guy. And the only reason I can think that they want to get rid of Donald Trump is they were all milking Ukraine for money following the removal of Yanukovych. They were selling weapons. They were out there just plundering the place, and they were all getting rich. Except for Trump. He wasn't part of the process. And that's why they want to get rid of him here. All right, Judicial Watch has hand-delivered a complaint to the House Ethics Office calling for a full investigation into Ilhan Omar's marriage to her brother. I don't know how much investigation there really needs to be. There's a marriage license. Look at the names on it. But I mean, if she did do that to defraud immigration, which appears to be the case, again, you look at the behavior of these people and you keep saying, are these the best that we can find to lead our nation? The answer seems to be no here. All right, on MSNBC's AM Joy, Saturday host Joy Reid and her panel of commentators basically reiterated something I said last week, that Nancy Pelosi is working on a plan to oust Donald Trump and Mike Pence simultaneously in order to make herself president. President Pelosi, hail to the chief. He's the chief that we all hail to. Anyway, Liz Warren got caught in another whopper, claims she's the daughter of a janitor, but her father's death certificate lists him as a flight instructor for the U.S. Army. They can't stop lying. They just cannot stop lying. Okay, so getting on back to this. Oh, we have a caller on the line. Let's go to Jim in Brooklyn. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Yeah, two things you were talking about. One about this Judge Berman with the tax records of President Trump.
Yes.
I believe that those were the New York State records, which really, I guess, there's no difference because I guess the federal record will come out along with them if they succeed. About a half hour ago, I called up the office of the Attorney General for the state of New York, Letitia James.
Yeah.
And I asked the girl who takes down the notes, I said, it would be better if they would postpone the investigation of the tax records, if they succeed in doing so, until after President Trump completes his second term in 5 years. A little something there. Now, with regard to the Kurds, I'm sure you know and many people know that Suleiman was the Turkish warrior, the Kurdish was a Kurdish warrior.
Yes.
Saladin was a Kurd. He conquered
Yes.
the Middle East in his day.
Yes.
They are very proficient in the art of war.
They are.
They lack support and they lack the hardware. Now, I think people often talk about America fighting Israel's wars. Well, this could be a case of not doing so in that corner of the world over there.
Mm-hmm.
But I suspect that the Kurds, they may have had a tenuous relationship, sporadic with Israel at one time or another. I think they'll be driven into the arms of the Israelis in some way or other.
Now that's an interesting thought. That's an interesting thought, because if the United States is abandoning the Kurds to the Turks, who else are they going to turn to? I mean, what are the other regional rivals to the Kurds in that region? I mean, they're getting along okay with Iraq. They're getting along okay. Well, maybe not so much Iraq, but definitely Iran, definitely Saudi Arabia. This could actually be an arrangement for Iraq and Turkey to just get rid of the Kurds because they've been such a problem for all these years.
Yeah, and I think we know also that the Kurds actually have large segments in 3 countries, right? Syria, Iraq, and Turkey. It's sort of like their countries like been trisected.
Yes.
And it's a problem for them, but the British left a lot of problems around there.
Yeah, well, the British have a habit of doing that.
Yeah. Anyhow, that's what I wanted to talk about today.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you.
I just want to ask you one other thing.
Sure.
Did you hear what Alex Jones and other people have talked about, which is actually verifiable? That President Trump has activated the prospect of Marine reserves protecting the White House and a possible what you would call
prevention of a coup d'etat. I hadn't talked about it yet on this show, but it's definitely on the talking points list.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Jones is all revved up about it. He's driving everybody nuts with it. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. All right, we will get to that story because, again, it's a reckless thing for Trump to do. It makes him look like he's afraid and weak, and he cannot afford to look like that right now.
Okay, good luck in getting your literally your house in order.
Oh, I need all the help I can get. I keep telling everybody I'm going to buy a Powerball ticket. Win. I'm just going to buy a yacht, retire, and sail around the Mediterranean for the rest of my life. Anyway, let's switch over to George in Hawaii. Aloha, George. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Mike. Thank you. Hi, Mike. Thank you. I haven't spoken to you for a while. I haven't even listened to the show, but this thing
shame on you.
Very, very alarming. Well, I know, and I apologize for that because you do run a great show. I've just been very preoccupied with other things, but you do run a darn good show, and generally I agree with you on many things, but of course, there's divergence. But I'm afraid with this Kurd thing that, as Colin Powell has stated, our foreign policy is in such disarray.
Yes.
If we don't get this under control pretty quick, some serious things could happen. Very serious.
Well, our foreign policy is in disarray because Bolton came on in and just did what he thought Bolton, wanted to do until Trump finally fired him, as he should have done long ago. I mean, when Bolton got pulled on in, I think a lot of people realized this guy is going to be trouble. What is Trump thinking, bringing Bolton into the foreign policy apparatus of this country? Bolton has a long reputation of just going his own way and doing what he wants to do.
I understand, Mike, but and I agree. But it's been the policy of this country because, like the gentleman before me discussed, the Kurds live in 3-4 different countries in that region, and they don't have a lot of organization, but they have a lot of people.
Yes, they do.
28 million, and whatever it is, and I'm afraid of a pogrom or something that could be so destructive and so sinister that it could undermine the entire security of the world. I mean, we're talking about some serious issues here. And I agree with you. Everything the British have touched, everything they have touched has turned to mud. Absolutely.
It really has, but we had that one earlier caller who mentioned Salahuddin. And, of course, Salahuddin did what he did, not because he had superior weapons, but because he was a brilliant commander, and he understood the realities of, dealing on the battlefield, of dealing with water and food shortages, and were another Salahuddin to Kurds, I think we would see some serious problems. Okay, listen, we've got to take a break for commercials, and George, thanks an awful lot. We'll be right back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones here to Keith in Montana. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I hope you have good fir trees to beat your head on. Anyway.
I got oak trees out here.
There you go.
I've got elm trees out here. Actually, there's a lot of rocks out here to beat your head again. And by the way, I mean, Indiana is famous for emeralds. And when we moved into our little place here, out back, there was this big bin of rocks, and I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on until I started digging in it and discovered the guy was panning for emeralds.
Really?
Yep.
All right, well, hey, I had another scenario for you.
Okay, go for it.
You remember that Kurdistan was supplying the oil to Israel. You
Yes.
read that in the Times of Israel, France 24,
Yes.
and everything like that. But now that Trump has made sure that Israel secured the Golan Heights and they have the LNG off of the Gaza coastline, Israel has finished its, or is now getting its line into Italy to sell its oil. So I think they've secured that.
Yeah.
And I think Turkey is going to go after that oil for itself now.
That's a possibility. That is definitely a possibility.
Yeah. Remember in the foreign policy there, how the CIA supplied the gases at the time there for Saddam to gas 5,000 Kurds at the time. You know, this whole thing. I get upset when I hear people talk about our foreign policy. This isn't our foreign. The only time it becomes our foreign policy is when some Americans' kids are sitting over there dying for some stupid barrel of oil or something like that. You know.
Yes.
That's just my opinion. It doesn't have anything to do with dogs, but I thought I'd call and let you know that, okay?
No, that's definitely a possibility. But I think without being able to define exactly what it's going to be, it does appear that there's about to be a tremendous, dramatic shift in that part of the world.
Well, your Satanist preachers out there, Pat Robertson and Pastor Hagee, are whining like mad there that Israel's losing their security. So I'm sure Trump will cave in on something like that before too long.
How can Israel lose its security? It's like the sixth most powerful nuclear nation on earth.
Yeah, well, don't tell anyone that.
All right, everybody, that was a secret. Don't share that with anybody.
Have a good day.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Keith. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open again, 800-313-9443. Okay, so getting on back to this whole impeachment whistleblower, Mark Zaid, who's the attorney supposedly representing the whistleblower at the center of the impeachment movement, says he's representing a second so-called whistleblower who spoke to the intelligence community's inspector general about Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian president. What they're trying to do is go back and correct all the mistakes that were made. Because in the first story about the whistleblower, they went on in and said, well, he went right to Congress. He should have gone to the IG. There should have been a formal filing. And again, a lot of people think this is John Bolton on his revenge tour. I would not at all be surprised. But at this point, they're throwing so many whistleblowers out there. Who's going to believe them? I mean, they're out there literally hunting down informants on the president. Who's going to believe that they've actually found that many people? Anyway, apparently there's been a recording released by The Blaze. Artem Steinik, director of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, supposedly admitted that his country worked to boost Hillary Clinton in 2016 by harming candidate Trump. Remember Russiagate? Oh, Russia stole the election away from Hillary. Those evil, 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 evil Russians. And it turned out, no, it wasn't them at all. It was the Ukrainians trying to steal the election for Hillary. They're all crookeds over there. All right, now, Democrats are probably going to make a big stink out of this. But apparently, Ukraine's top prosecutor has reopened the corruption case targeting the energy company Hunter Biden helped run, just hours after Donald Trump says the country should investigate his political revivals. Now, I want to remind everybody that there is a treaty between the United States and Ukraine that goes back to 1999, which mandates cooperation on criminal investigations. So this is not a case of Trump just calling up and saying, look, I need your help to smear this guy. Trump called up and said, we have a treaty. We're looking at a possible violation. You guys have got to help here. All right, this is the story that caller called in on. There is supposedly a directive involving the United States Marine Corps Reserve units via MAR Admin number 51519, signed on October 3rd, 2019, authorized by Brigadier General Daniel L. Shipley, Director of Manpower Plans and Policy. Notably, Brigadier Shipley was nominated by President Trump for the rank of Major General, according to Program Analysis and Evaluation, Department of Program and Resources for the U.S. Marines. So this new order is summarized as Marines ordered to active duty in defense of support of civil authorities. In support of defense of civil authorities. All right, well, there's first of all a problem. This Brigadier General Shipley obviously wasn't made a Major General, so I don't know what he's involved with that. Now, the reason they're using the Marines is the Marines, unique in the military forces, are immune from posse comitatus. That's why years ago, when they did this combat arms survey at places like 29 Palms, they only examine the Marines because the Marines are allowed to be deployed against U.S. citizens, unlike the Navy and the Army and the Air Force and the Coast Guard. I think that if this came from Donald Trump, I think it's a bad move. It makes him look weak. It makes him look afraid. Doesn't need a huge amount of advance time to get the Marines out there to help him. So I'm not sure that this was a particularly good move for him to make. Okay, all right. The banking crisis in India, 900,000 depositors are in trouble. We're talking almost 1 million. Besides working for George Soros, Greta is also tied to the domestic terrorist group. This is a split story. And it has to do with the fact that Greta, who is this successor to Jesus, who is supposedly the new archangel of the human cause global warming, they're talking about possibly giving her a Nobel Peace Prize. And what a joke that would be, especially after the one that Al Gore collected. So Greta has a handler who follows her nearly everywhere she goes. Her name is Louisa Marie Neubauer. She's an operative for the One Movement. This is a climate hoax group that's funded and controlled by George Soros, but also eugenicists Bill and Melinda Gates. You know, the Gates who think, well, now that they've made all this money off of Windows, that they don't need you anymore. And by the way, I'm still hearing from people that the latest versions of Windows 10 and iOS 13 are absolute epic disasters. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show here. So, got Bill and Melinda Gates. You've got this washed up rock singer and political operative Bono. And right on their website, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation admits the One Movement is a global organization that uses celebrities and other assets to push climate change activism and other leftist causes on the masses. So probably a good reason not to listen to those celebrities all that much here, especially ones like Robert De Niro here. More about him a little bit later in the show. Over at Hewlett Packard, we missed a commercial. We missed a commercial break.
We did.
We did. Okay.
You didn't hear it, so.
You know I didn't hear it. All right.
Yeah. Okay. No problem.
All right.
We'll get the next one.
All right. Fine. Okay. So apparently Hewlett Packard, and Hewlett Packard used to be this amazing company. They made amazing calculators. I had an HP 15C. I had a 28C. I had one of the newer graphing calculators, would actually do 3D graphics, but I had to sell it to pay for the move out here to Indiana. But apparently, they're having to cut as much as 16% of the workforce amid print unit woes. And they're going to let go 7,000 to 9,000 positions through firings and voluntary early retirement. This will save about $1 billion by the end of fiscal 2022, according to Hewlett Packard. Now, there was a documentary that came out a while back, and it was called Pyramids of Waste. And it basically showed how printer companies, not just Hewlett Packard, but how printer companies were basically designing their printers to fail, planned obsolescence. And the idea being that it would print so many pages of paper, and then it would say, we're sorry, your unit has failed, take it in for servicing. And of course, you take it in for servicing, and the guy that kind of say, oh, it can't be fixed. Got to buy a new one. Got to buy a new one. Tells you a lot about what's going on with our country. But Hewlett Packard, I mean, I remember I first became familiar with Hewlett Packard back in my NASA days. The stuff was amazing. It was just absolutely the cutting edge, amazing stuff. And now, and I'll grant you this little tiny Hewlett Packard laptop that I'm running Windows 10 on, it's okay, but it is slow. Now, I'm going to try and add a little memory to it once I get my main system back up. All right, let's go to a phone call to Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I'm a little concerned about tomorrow. You know, tomorrow morning is the beginning of Yom Kippur.
Yes.
And I'm worried about maybe a false flag happening out in the Middle East somewhere, especially what's going on with Syria and Turkey and,
Yes.
you know, that stuff that's going on, you know, a false flag tomorrow. What do you think?
I think it's entirely possible. I think it just feels to me like that whole area is getting ready to explode. And we don't know where it's going to come from. We just know that, yeah, everybody has just reached their breaking point.
Yeah, that's what I feel too. All right, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Jackson in Nevada. Aloha, Jackson. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike. I wanted to talk about the Marines being called up, you know, the reserve.
Yes.
So one thing that's going on in the Middle East is, like you noted the other day when they, you know, moved out of Kuwait or Qatar so they could
Yes.
have their missile defense system not be so compromised. But the Marines are the first ones to go in situations. So if you're sending a bunch of Marines in, you're going to need other Marines to do their jobs here in the States. So there's a possibility right there. It could be not for Donald Trump's weakness, but planning on something big going on in the Middle East.
I would disagree because this command and control center is under Air Force control.
Well, yeah, no, that's a different story there, you know. But you don't want I mean, the Marines are going to be the first ones typically that go in places.
Only if they're expecting an actual conflict, and I don't think that they really are. I think that they just I mean, if they were expecting that there was going to be friction, they wouldn't have announced it in the first place.
Well, it could be just a ploy of strength on Donald Trump's part to, I mean, he's obviously made positions of strength in different places around the world by, posing military assets in certain locations.
Well, no, I agree with you on that one, but I think this idea, and I'm not even really sure this came from Trump himself. It seems to be coming from this brigadier, and maybe this is the brigadier's revenge tour for failing to make major general. But it does make Trump look weak and afraid.
Okay. Yeah, that's all that's just one of those things I, wanted to put out there to see if anybody else might have any more information about it as well.
I'm sure they have a lot of information. According to that earlier caller, Alex Jones is just going totally bananas on this. I don't want to see this happen. I don't want to see Marines in the streets of the United States of America shooting at Americans because they don't like the president. Okay, that's not the way this country is supposed to be working here. Anyway.
I definitely agree with you as well. Yes.
I'm sorry, one more time?
No, I said I definitely agree with you on that. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right. Certainly. Okay, getting back over to the world of liberal fantasy land. E-coupons, please. E-coupons, please here. Bernie Sanders is out there insisting that his $16 trillion climate change plan will basically pay for itself. Now, call me silly, but I remember not too long ago a similar politician insisting that the war in Iraq would pay for itself. I remember not too long ago when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was out there saying that her Green New Deal would pay for itself. I'm getting a little sick and tired of all these things being pushed at us with this promise that it's all going to pay for itself, and then it never does. Call me silly. I'm getting a little picky about that kind of a thing. All right, you're going to love this next story. And it's mostly because I love it. Apparently, an environmental group's plan to paint the British Treasury building in blood red paint backfired last Thursday. They got themselves a decommissioned fire engine, filled it with 475 gallons of red paint, and they were just going to spray the Treasury building when the hose ruptured, spraying just about everything except the intended target. So that must have been something to see. Whoopsie. A little bit of stuff out there. Okay, there is a hard cold starting to settle in the American West. We had one day last week that was really cold here in Indiana. It's picked up a little bit better. It's going to be a hard winter. Some people are still digging out from the record-setting September snow. You got to be paying attention to that here. All right, let's see. Let's go to the phone lines here. Mike in Brazil. Aloha, Mike. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, you were talking about Hewlett Packard.
Yes.
And about their printers.
Yes.
There was a story a few years ago. It was about a guy who had this experience. He was printing some documents, and all of a sudden the machine stopped working.
Yes.
So the guy took the guy took the printer to a service center, and the guy at the service center said that it's better to buy a new one because the cost of repairing it will be like 3 times more than a new printer would be.
Yeah,
So
that was documented in that film,
this.
Pyramids of Waste.
That's right. So
Yeah.
The guy went back home. He took the printer with him, and he went on the internet and he Googled something. Finally, he came up with a Russian guy. He had a code, by the way, written C. Okay, talking about programming languages here.
Yep.
And well, of course, the guy didn't give any any guarantees that it's going to work for every printer. But the guy explained what the process was, why the printer stopped working.
Yes.
The chip contains a counter.
Yes.
Okay, and it's preset to about 2,000 print jobs. Okay, maybe depending on the model, it can be more or less. Okay.
Yes.
So they said, he offered a code written in C. The guy downloaded it, compiled it, and bingo, the guy's printer was zeroed. Okay, and his printer started working like new. Just because of some code that this Russian guy put on the internet. So
planned obsolescence.
Everything is in the chip.
There's one caveat you need to keep in mind, and that is the way that these printers clean their little print heads is they'll squirt ink into this giant sponge that's located in the bottom of the printer. And if you keep resetting that chip, eventually that sponge gets so full of ink, it starts leaking out on your desk. So you need to be careful about that.
Yeah, but this case was different because he had to do with the chip, because the chip was preset to a particular number of print jobs. So when it reached that limit, the chip would refuse to cooperate.
Yes,
So,
it definitely would do
this
that.
Happened a while back, okay? Yeah, this was a while
and
back,
it is documented in that film, Pyramids of Waste. And if you haven't seen it, I would definitely take a look at it because, things are designed to fail to make you buy the same thing over and over and over and over again. Okay? America does not make quality products anymore. They make junk.
Are you familiar, Mike, are you familiar with the San Francisco firehouse that they have a light bulb that hasn't been shut off since 1800, since late 1800s? It's still working. That was before that consortium of electric light bulbs
the Phoenix Group
got together and they imposed an arbitrary limit of 5,000 hours per light bulb. That thing is still shining, Mike. Can you believe this? Since the late 1800s. It's someplace in San Francisco. I forgot the name of it, but it's in a firehouse. And
they even had a birthday party for it. They had a centenary
that's right. Oh, so you know
birthday for it. Yeah,
okay, so
the bulb was designed to last for a very, very long time. I mean, today's tungsten light bulbs that you buy at the supermarket won't even last as long as Edison's originals. I mean, that's how bad it is.
Right. You know what I saw this? I saw it in a documentary called Planned Obsolescence.
Yes.
It was on YouTube a few years ago, and I saw that, and I when I was looking at the video, I said, this is impossible. I mean, that light bulb has never been shut off, and it's like it's still working today.
Yeah.
It's the 1800s. I said, this is compared to what you have today, you're lucky if you reach 5,000 hours. I mean, you got to consider yourself lucky.
It's not even that. I think the Phoenix Group actually sets it at 1,000 hours. 1,000 hours, not 5,000. 1,000.
But I remember back when I was in the States, when I was living in the States, I think the max was like 5,000 hours. Today, maybe lower. I don't know. We're talking about 20 years ago, so I don't know what the situation is today. But anyway, my closing point here is the United States, Mike, is going down into a civil war. There's no doubt about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Imagine if one of these lunatics get into power. I'm talking about, I'm talking about Democrats, right? So if one of these lunatics get into power, the U.S. is finished. Literally, it's finished. Physically, spiritually, any which way. So I was thinking, I said, what is going to take for the American public to realize that their days are numbered, really, because I'm looking at Elizabeth Warren, I'm looking at AOC, I'm looking at Hillary Clinton. What's that guy's name? O'Rourke, Beto O'Rourke or Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah.
I can't even pronounce his name. But anyway, so imagine if one of these lunatics get into power, Mike, the U.S. is done. I mean, you can put a fork in it.
I don't
anyway,
think
that's
it's
all I have to
really
say.
so much
Yeah.
the individuals. It's unfortunately that we're seeing our civilization fragment. It's coming apart.
Yeah, and the Democrats play a central role in this because it is they who are dividing the society, not us. We're trying to unify the society, and they're doing the opposite. Mike, the Democrats are the antithesis of democracy. I mean, they claim to be Democrats, yet they refuse to accept a referendum in various nations like Crimea, like England. They refuse to accept the time-tested method of democratic governance. You know, it's like these people, they claim to be Democrats, but they refuse to accept the democratic procedure. The masses, the majority rules. Now, in this case, the majority ruled in Britain, and they were supposed to get the heck out of the EU. Well, they're still in the EU, and probably they're going to still be in the EU for many, many more years to come. And
Yes.
the same thing in Crimea. They keep bashing the Russians for stealing Crimea, when everybody knows that Crimea joined the Russian Federation based on a referendum, okay, which passed with overwhelming majority of votes. Okay,
Yes.
I think it was like 89% of the votes that voted to stay within the Russian Federation, and the Ukrainians really got mad about it, and then they started the attacks on Donbass and all those regions in the eastern Ukraine. So, Mark, this whole thing just stinks. It stinks to
Yeah,
high heaven.
it does. Okay, Mike, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're getting some developing news here. And apparently, let's see, the Turks have started bombing Kurdish targets. And no, I'm sorry, it's Erdogan's Syria invasion begins. Turkish jets filmed bombing Kurdish targets. Now, there's a problem with that, obviously, despite being one of the targets, and that is that the United States stood by the Kurds all these years, and now they've simply abandoned them. That's going to send a message to other countries that why would you listen to the United States? Why would you accept any of their promises? It's simply not going to happen. So, and apparently over at shtfplan.com, there's a column out there where Democrats want Trump silenced. They literally want him shut off social media. Now that is about as un-American as you can get, because we do have this little thing called a First Amendment where we're all allowed to talk. And so for the Democrats to get on out there and say, we have to silence the president, can't let the American people hear the president, that's pretty sick. All right, let's go back to the phones here. Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. That's very unsurprising that they want him silenced. There have
Yes.
been calls for some other Democratic activists and politicians talking to ban him from Twitter, for among other things.
Yep.
I think you remember that. But this is the reason why they want him silenced, Mike, is that, in my opinion, I think increasingly, I know that you may feel much the same way.
Yeah.
That this whole Russiagate, and now they've kind of thrown that away, and now they're going with Ukrainegate.
Yes.
Is basically, it's all based on their own corruption. And like Russiagate was based on their own spying and their own meddling in elections, Ukrainegate is the same, their own corruption, and they tried to heap it on the Republicans and Trump. This is like a coup. This is, of course, the deep state, the secret police, the FBI, the CIA.
Yep.
All these guys, Brennan and Kobe, they're all part of this. They're all making big money. If
they're not getting the traction. They're not getting the traction with the American people.
But if Hunter Biden was making $3.5 million off some little tertiary deal, then imagine what Obama and Brennan and Comey and Clapper were making on this as well.
Imagine what the Clintons were making off the Uranium One deal.
Exactly. And so this is a coup. And since the secret police is neck deep along with the Democrats in this and making money and intruding in elections and everything else, I think the calling up of the reserves, or at least the warning order going out to the Marine Reserves to be called up, I can't argue too much with that, Mike. It's a real
politics is perception. Politics is perception. I think it was a mistake for him to do. Anyway, we got to take a break here for station identification. Thank you for the phone call, Peter. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And everybody's already waiting in on what's going on over in Turkey. And Senate Majority Leader McConnell is out there saying that withdrawing from Turkey helps Russia, Iran, and ISIS, and more or less he's correct. But I think the real damage is to America's credibility as a military ally. Because look at all these countries that we were supposed to be friends with, and then we turn around and we double-cross them. And now we're doing it again to the Kurds. Nobody's going to trust us. Why would they? All right, let's go back to the phones here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Doing all right.
You in your new house?
Sort of in and out. I'm actually over at a relative's home to do the broadcast because our cable doesn't get installed for another few days. But we actually did sleep in the new place last night.
Oh, great. Anyway, I'm glad you guys are, getting pretty much set there, I think you're going to
Well, I've got to build Claire's desk tomorrow, and then Wednesday I've got to build my desk and get all this stuff up and running. And again, we got to finish going through all the packages and see if we really did get everything back that we packed at the other end, because there are things I'm looking for I can't find.
Hey, you know what? When I moved from Texas to North Carolina,
yeah,
I took along, what did I take along? My dogs, my computer, my guns, and that was it. To buy all new stuff when I got here. Either stuff or I went to some consortium type places where you got new stuff, and I got some new. Okay, I brought my TV too, but it broke on the way. I guess the dogs broke it in the back there. So, it's,
well, our TVs seem to have made it, but a lot of the stuff that we brought is stuff that can't be bought. It's like the stuff we've collected throughout our lives, going to places like Tahiti and Papua New Guinea and Australia. And, you go down there and you buy all this folk art stuff. It's not like you can order it on eBay.
Right. But anyway, what I wanted to talk, I want to talk about two things. The first one is thing about the Marines.
Yes.
A guy called Alex Jones today, he's in the Navy, and he explained why they're talking to Marines rather than, for instance, the Army. And that's because the Constitution called only for a Navy. They did not call for a standing Army, which is true. And the reason for the Navy was because, to ensure freedom of the seas and that nobody could blockade us or anything like that. And the militia that they talk about for the Second Amendment were the people themselves. And if we stuck to that, we'd be in a lot better shape today. Now, as far as what Trump is doing, I kind of disagree on that with you. I think he's doing the right thing. If he's doing this, I'll tell you why. You got a guy like this guy, Mudd. so much there on CNN. He's made already a threat on the president's life, I think, a year ago or so. On top of that, right on TV. On top of that, he now made a threat that he was going to shiv, the government, he says, was going to shiv Rudy Giuliani. Shiv is, of course, a prison term for, sticking a knife to somebody. Okay? So this guy is dangerous, and yet he's not being arrested. The Secret Service should go right to the studio there at CNN and haul him out in handcuffs, and then interrogate him. It's up to me. He'd be waterboarded, but it's not up to me. But he should certainly be interrogated.
It is amazing how many people have come on out with implied threats against the president, and the Secret Service just seems to shrug their shoulders, and that's not their job.
So that's why I think I think he's right. I think what he also should do is, I've said this before. I said it 2 years ago when they were, when I knew, how dirty the FBI and the CIA is, the Justice Department.
Yeah.
Should have had military people. I don't trust the federal police. They're all a bunch of corrupt, stick together. They stick together with each other and all that. I would have called military personnel and raided the FBI, the Justice Department, and the CIA. Grabbed all their computers, all their records, gone over them. I would have relieved all the top people in these agencies of the command. I think they should be expanded personally, but if you're going to keep them, at least you should have gotten rid of all their top people and put people he could trust in there.
That's the hard part. That's the hard part there. Now, my experience coming out of Hawaii, because we have this very high per capita percentage of military personnel, my experience coming out of Hawaii is that by and large, there are exceptions, by and large, military people are strict constitutionalists. And obviously, because I'm a strict constitutionalist, I find a great deal of empathy for them. And I'm having a hard time seeing, what's holding these people back right now.
But you see what happens, like when you have an emergency in this country, posse comitatus gets lifted anyway. You saw that in the riots in the early '90s, the Rodney King riots there in Los Angeles.
I remember that.
Army.
Well, they basically federalized the National Guard.
Well, no, they actually sent active duty Marines and soldiers in there too, because it was getting so bad. The guard couldn't quite handle it. And
I remember the LAPD were running like hell.
Yes, they were. And you had it back in the '60s in many big cities that were rioting. You actually had federal troops called in. I was in the '70s, in the early '70s, and we had a couple of incidents. I was never called over, but there were a couple of incidents where we were alerted already, and to go into cities. So, and that was the regular army. So there are cases where this has happened, and it's nobody made much of a big deal about it at the time. Now going back to Syria now, I'm very happy that we're getting out of there finally. However, I think the Turks are making a big mistake because they are dealing with, first of all, the Syrian army today is a very tough little army. They've got they're battle hardened and they're ready for anything, and they are defending their country. And if they unite with the Kurds, who are some of the best fighters in the world, man for man, I think the Turks are going to find themselves in a lot of trouble. The Turks are not battle hardened. I know they've traditionally been good soldiers going back to the Ottoman Empire, but that's a long time ago. They are. I think they're in for a rude awakening if they go in there.
I don't know. The latest live update we're getting is that the Turkish air forces have struck the Kurdish SDF base in Syria's Hasaka province. So it's definitely on for real.
That's the beginning. But once they start sending infantry and armor in, I think they're going to be in for. Now, of course, the Kurds have to unite with the Syrian army. They've got to do that. It's very important. The other thing is
how is that going to happen? How is it going to happen when the Kurds and the Syrians are shooting at each other?
They're not shooting at Syrian army. As far as I know, there's never been any battles between.
Oh, you're right. You're talking. My mistake. You're talking about Turkey.
You're thinking of
Yeah, I'm thinking of
yeah.
Erdogan. I don't know. I mean, that would be an interesting thought here. I mean, see, the Syrians and the Kurds have had their degree of friction as well. As one of our earlier callers pointed out, they're spread over 3 different areas. There's the Turkish Kurds, the Syrian Kurds, and the Iraqi Kurds. It would take a very and the Iranian Kurds. It would take a very powerful leader to bring them all together. I'm not saying it can't be done. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, another Salahuddin could do it.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Saladin was a Kurd, A lot of people don't know that, but he was a Kurd.
Yes,
and what a general he was. I mean,
he was amazing.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if everything is true about that movie. What was it called? Army of God or something like that?
Kingdom of Heaven.
Kingdom of Heaven. But, I mean, I think it gave a pretty good idea of who Saladin was. And, and he was a great leader. He's not only a general, he's a great leader. I never forget at the end when he said, basically, when this Crusaders threatened, commander of Crusaders going to burn down Jerusalem, this will make, be the best thing history would find.
It's my favorite line in the whole movie. My favorite line in the whole movie. But the actual battles that took place, the conflict between Salahuddin and Balian is well documented, as is the defeat of the Crusader army at Acre. And it really was the end of the First Crusade. And so then they tried to get a second crusade going, and it was crusade after crusade, and they kept getting slaughtered. And
by the way,
part of the problem was that the Arab Muslims were perfectly willing to die for their faith, something that the British weren't necessarily prepared to do.
By the way, most of Saladin's army, at least according to this movie, now I don't know if that's really true, historically true or not, I look it up, were Syrians, which would be considered Syrians today. So there's so with all the hostility that they there's not really that much of a hostility between the Kurds and the Syrians. So I would say that there's a good chance it's going to happen, because I know Bashar Assad does not want the Turks invading here. He doesn't want any country invading his country, and the Turks.
No, nobody does.
Don't want it. And on top of that, what Erdogan's going to have to worry about is he's got plenty of Kurds living in his own country who they're having a lot of problems with. On top of it, and the Kurds could turn, and the Kurds in his country, very likely they could conduct the fifth column. So he's got his work cut out for him. He's a fool, I think, because
I agree with you on that one. This is a very foolish thing for him to be doing. But again, going back to this story about Mitch McConnell saying that this is a mistake, he is implying that this really all comes down from Donald Trump. And if it does, Donald Trump is the one who's being an idiot, not Erdogan.
You mean for getting out of there? For Trump getting got troops out? I think don't you think he should get troops out of there, though?
Well, basically, I think we should, but it's sending a message that we've lost that war, along with Afghanistan. And that's going to be the beginning of the end of the war agenda. It could signal the end of the war, the coming war with Iran. Because, if you go back to, I think it was 2003, you had General Wesley Clark came on out and said, there is a plan to conquer all of the oil-rich nations in the Middle East and shackle them to the dollar. But when you have a plan like that, the first time you lose one, it's all over. The wheels come off the war wagon. And I think that's what's happening in Syria.
At least we're not losing it with 58,000 men as we did in Vietnam. At least, to me, losing, when we say we're losing, I don't consider we losing. I don't think the people of this country, I think we're winning. I think the people who are losing is the empire. the evil empire, the New World Order, whatever you want to call them, the neocons, neolibs.
We're losing it because we're being forced to pay for it. We're losing it because our children are forced to be killed and crippled for it.
Yeah, I know, but hopefully we'll be out of there, and that won't happen anymore. And we didn't have to lose 58,000. We lost too many already anyway, but we didn't lose almost 60,000 the way we did in Vietnam. Okay, so that's the one saving grace. We lost a lot of men we shouldn't have. These wars were all illegal. We never should have been involved in the first place. This was the empire. This was not the American people that really wanted this. We were bamboozled into war in the first place by the false flag of 9/11, which conducted, in my opinion, is conducted by the U.S., Israeli, and Saudi government all cooperating together. That's what I think. There was a big cooperation there, and that was 9/11. I mean, it's almost no question. I mean, you did have the Saudi hijackers. You had the dancing Israelis who were actually Mossad agents. They knew exactly where to be to watch this thing happen. They had explosives in their van. Okay, there's no question that our government, of course, was involved too. The neocons. It couldn't have been done without the cooperation of our government. Cheney calling those, calling off hitting those planes before they hit the Pentagon and all that. The whole thing. The way Bush, was kept at that school rather than be rushed out. I mean, the whole thing is obvious. This was a. They wanted to get us into the wars. This was their Pearl Harbor that they.
Yeah. They even described it as such.
That you're talking about. Yeah, those are Pearl Harbor. They wanted this badly, and they got it, and we got it in the butt. Okay, but
yes, we did.
Now, hopefully, we're going to be out of it. That's praying and hoping we're out.
Well, I don't know. This could spiral completely out of control. I mean, McConnell is out there saying this could lead to an escalation with Russia, Iran, and ISIS. Again, the Kurds are going to be furious with the United States. The Kurds could turn around and attack the U.S. For betraying them like this. Anyway, Mark, we're going to let you go here. The phone lines are really loading up here, and we're going to switch over to Nancy in California. Nancy, thank you for waiting very patiently. What's on your mind?
Are the Kurds really that much of a threat? Are they really that powerful? They're attacking Armenia, a Christian nation. The Kurds have always had a cozy relationship with Israel. And recently, Netanyahu was kind of, I think he was, it almost seemed like he was going to blackmail Erdogan. He's like, have you apologized to the Armenians? They don't care about the Armenians. They're just trying to use them as a pawn. So he's like acting like this might come up. You better do our bidding. It's all interesting, all the politics, but I don't have any concern for the Kurds nor the Israelis, and I think that Turkey's being manipulated.
Well, again, McConnell is implying that this is actually coming down from Donald Trump, and my concern here, I'd like to see all the violence stop. I'd like to see the bloodshed stop, but at the same time, how does the United States maintain its international credibility if it simply abandons its allies at the first, drop of a hat?
So who was our ally?
The Kurds. The U.S. was supporting the Kurds.
Yeah, the Kurds, but because we have the wrong allies. We shouldn't have Israel for an ally, but we do. And so we get all their baggage like the Kurds. Forget it. I think Trump is right. Let us get out of Syria.
Okay, well, hopefully you're going to be right here, but I think this is going to spin out of control. That's just my opinion. Anyway, thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Dee in Minnesota. Aloha, Dee. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Lost D.
We lost Dee. Let's go to Martin in California. Aloha, Martin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Yeah, Nan,
You're on the air.
agree a lot with what. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine. You're on the air.
Gotcha. I agree with Nancy, and I'm trying to understand, though, the whole situation with the Kurds. When you say we're abandoning the Kurds, it almost sounds like you're arguing for interventionist war to help the Kurds. And I'm agreeing.
No, I'm not.
No interventionist war.
What I'm saying is the United States supported the Kurds for years, and now all of a sudden, with virtually no warning, is dropping that support. That's going to make us look bad to other countries who are going to feel they cannot trust the United States. I don't think we should have gotten involved with the Kurds in the first place. But having made that mistake, I think we're compounding it, by basically saying to Turkey, go on in and blow the heck out of them.
Well, what kind of support do you think we should supply the Kurds with at this point?
I don't think we should have started supporting the Kurds in the first place. I mean, that was being done primarily to annoy Iran. Anyway, we've got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back with another phone call after these few words. Here we are, we're back again. Okay, so basically Turkey is denying accusations that it launched an attack on a Syrian border crossing. So I think this is a good illustration of what I was saying about this thing could easily spin out of control here. Okay, we got callers on the line here. We've got Dee back. Dee, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Called again. I have to agree with just about everything that Mark said previously about getting out. I hope and pray to God it's the end of this war agenda. It's gone on too long. It's time for it to stop.
I agree.
Now, there is a caveat with this.
Yes.
My questions are, firstly, I'd like to hear maybe you or somebody that's got historical knowledge explain to me the whole history of Turkey and the Kurds, but that's a separate thing. Two, if this were to backfire and get the Syrians also involved with the Kurds, it could really cause a lot of problems. It could backfire on Erdogan.
That is my concern.
Secondly, it may backfire on Trump, because now you're going to get all these neocon, Ziocon, Israeli first scumbags that want to keep this going on board with the Democrats' impeachment.
Yes.
That is another concern I have. I'm almost certain they're going to gang up on him now with the Democrats. It really looks like they might, because that war agenda was huge.
Yeah.
It would gain him popular support, but there's a slight problem with that. The election is not for another 13 months. They've got plenty of time to impeach him. There's more than enough time to do that. So he could win 2020 if they do not impeach him first.
I have a very strong feeling that they're going to do anything, emphasis anything, to get Trump out of the Oval Office by 2020. I think Hillary's coming back. I think Hillary knows that she can't beat Donald Trump, and that she's going to arrange to run against somebody that she knows she can easily defeat. And
now I have one more question.
Sure.
What's going on with Trump and the Marines and Alex Jones? What the hell is going on? What's that all about? This is the first I've heard of it.
Well, apparently,
sorry to be so strong, but I'm confused.
Well, apparently, this brigadier general in the Marines has issued an order for the Marines to be on standby for domestic operations here in the United States to put down a possible coup d'etat. Now, the reason the Marines are being used, of course, that's the story. And the reason the Marines are being used...
Start at chapter 1. I'm still missing a few pages.
Okay, well, again, the story is on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. There's this Marine Corps Brigadier General. Now, we don't know if this guy issued the order or if it came from Trump, but the order basically is placing the Marine Corps on active reserve duty to possibly deal with a domestic attempt at a coup d'etat. And the concern I have... Well, you know, the liberals. You know, I mean, look at how the liberals were behaving after the 2016 election. They were, you know, wrecking the cities and wrecking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now I got you. I was just confused at first. I'm like, huh? What? Coup? What are you talking about?
Well,
Sorry,
my question
wait.
is, if Trump issued this order, it makes it look like he's weak and afraid, and he can't afford to do that right now.
No, he couldn't. No, but but on the same time, he needs to try and protect what he has. I don't know that there'd be a coup. I think it's going to come down to impeachment. There may be unrest if they impeach him.
What are they going to impeach him for? What are they going to impeach him for?
I know that. You know that. I know that. But they've made up all this crap, and they're moving on it. And now you've got the neocons against him because he pulled out of Syria.
Yeah,
that's... do anything to get rid of him.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'd be more worried about impeachment and civil unrest because of it than a coup. But that's just me. I'm not an expert. I could be wrong.
It's going to take a little bit of cogitation to think about exactly what's going on here, because there is a lot of confusion. And again, it gets back to the idea that Trump can be very capricious. He doesn't always seem to think everything all the way through carefully. He's getting a lot of bad advice. He's easily manipulated. He's subject to flattery. And frankly, I think he's a weak leader. Anyway, listen.
He's like a 12-year-old child. But that's
anyway,
it. See you later.
We have to let you go, and we'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones here to Rod in Illinois. Aloha, Rod. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Rod, are you there? Okay, well, let's switch over to Lenny in California. Aloha, Lenny. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes. Can you hear me, Michael?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Pertaining to this situation in Syria, let me ask you a question. Did Assad invite America to come over and be a part of this war on ISIS? That America, Israel, and NATO are really behind? Did he invite them to come over and help participate in this?
No, he didn't.
Okay. And did Assad not offer the Kurds total autonomous or to be part of the government if they would just lay down their weapons and join the Syrian government? And isn't it interesting that the part of Syria that the United States illegally invaded and continue to occupy just happens to be the richest part when it comes to oil and gas?
Yeah, you noticed that, did you? That's exactly what this was all about. It was control of the oil and gas in the Kurdish-controlled area. Assad did not invite the United States to come on in and take control of this very wealthy area. Assad understood from having watched what happened in Kuwait and Iraq what was likely to happen. And of course, as you know, the U.S. came on in and started lying about chemical weapons attacks on various people to try to attacks. Now, Assad did try and negotiate a deal with the Kurds for them to have a semi-autonomous region if they would come in and join on the battle. But the Kurds want their own country. They want an independent Kurdistan. And, I mean, just the way the Palestinians want an independent Palestine, it's not an entirely unreasonable request.
Well, the Palestinians had an independent Palestine before it was taken from them.
That's true.
Okay, so that's mute. All right, but the point is that these same Kurds who the Syrians offered autonomy to, slapped their hand away, worked with Israel, NATO, and the other Gulf countries to try and divide Syria. Okay, and they do not deserve anything better. To be honest, if there's a such thing as karma, they don't deserve it, man. All right, so and as far as, you know, us, as far as you worrying about whether or not, you know, we're going to leave a lasting impression or a good impression on the rest of the world, well, that's mute too. Because, you know, and let me say this, I think that Trump doing what he's done, I see Colin Powell now has come out against Trump, slamming his foreign policy. But Trump is not the one that held up a fake vial of so-called nerve gas or whatever in the UN and
anthrax.
Said that, you know, Saddam Hussein, anthrax, yeah. He's not the one that did that. Colin Powell did that. And as a result, how many Iraqis are dead?
Quite a few.
Okay, quite a few, and it's still going. All right.
Yes.
So the thing is that this whole thing is for the dividing and conquering of Syria. Russia has issued a warning telling all people who do not deserve to be there to get out. And I'm with Russia, okay, because this thing needs to stop. Now, I think Erdogan is not an idiot. He doesn't want to have to go against Putin. All right.
Yes.
So there's a method to the madness, and it's just, and I think Trump has had it, and I'm with Trump. I don't know whether he enacted the Marines to stand up or not, but I found it interesting that Maria Bartiromo on her show yesterday, who had Lindsay Ladyboy Graham on, and she's talking about how all these missiles are being fired at Trump from the Democrats, from fellow Republicans, and she asked Graham, she said, you know, when are you guys going to start issuing subpoenas? She goes, I'm getting frustrated calls from all around that the Republicans won't do anything. So it seems to me Trump has enemies to his right. He has enemies to his left. He might as well gather the people he can to help him fight. At least he's willing to fight.
Well, it's not a question of enemies. It's the fact of upbringing. I mean, the liberals have been raised for generations now to think that screaming and yelling and begging and name-calling will get them what they want, and it works. Meanwhile, Republicans and conservatives are taught to be restrained and polite, and they can't fight back on that same level that the Democrats do. They need to learn, by the way. That's why they're losing. That's why the Republicans are losing, is they're showing too much restraint.
Well, see, I always notice something. Whenever the Republicans are in power, the Democrats seem that they have no power at all. But it never hurts the Democrats themselves. It always hurts the American people. But when the Democrats have power, the Republicans always seem to be powerless to stop the Democrats. But it never hurts the Republicans. It don't hurt the American people. See what I'm saying, Mike?
I see what you're saying.
It's all a show. It's all a show. But the Kurds are getting exactly what they deserve, okay, because they were offered autonomy. Assad wanted to work with them, but no, they wanted to help steal and divide the country, and it just so happened they picked the richest region. So, you know, it's like I said, I'm with Trump all the way on this. He might as well stand up and fight, and I'm with him. But let me just say this real quick, because it came up last week. I was listening to one of your shows last week, and you said that, you know, you can't understand why, you know, they're just going after Trump because Trump is giving them everything they want. And I respectfully say not everything, because we were supposed to have a World War III, particularly starting with Iran by now. But Trump, after years of saying that he wanted to attack Iran, is all of a sudden saying he wants to talk to Iran. Okay, and if you notice, during the Israeli election, Trump didn't really come out and back Netanyahu, especially when it was revealed that there was spy equipment all around the White House. And even though Trump said, I don't believe it came from Israel, Trump ain't no idiot. He knows where it came from.
He knows exactly where it came from.
And I believe this is one of the real reasons they're giving him so much hell right now. He has been the great Gore wonder, but it ain't enough. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, you're welcome. We're going to switch over to Miles in Maine. Aloha, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Great to hear you. Excellent call by Lenny. Love hearing Lenny out there, man. That guy makes so much sense all the time. I hear him. Awesome. And again, the caller before D, the woman that brought up the Armenian, that was a very, very interesting subject in the way she detailed it. And it's true. The Armenians were the real original Holocaust, and then the Jews tried to steal it. In fact, they have stolen it. And like Hitler said, who remembers the Armenians? Who remembers the Armenians? Those gracious, wonderful Christian people that we turn our back on repeatedly for people like these Turks, Israel, and all of it. So I'm right with Trump. I'm glad Trump is going to stand up now and quit getting manipulated around by Bolton and all these war horrors. And he's going to say, you know what? This is the true me. I meant to get out of these wars. I said I was going to do it, and now I'm going to stand up and do it. I got my guts together. I got rid of Bolton. And you know what? Think of the domino effect this could have if Trump stands up and gets us out of this war and gets us out of all this Mideast quaggery, and everything going on with it. Not just the lives and the money we'll save, but we actually might get some respect for not meddling in people's affairs. We owe the Kurds nothing. In fact, the Kurds were the people that had made sure they had their foot in the rear ends of the Armenian people, refugees who were fleeing, being slaughtered by those Turks twice. Okay? And the Turks, you know what? I'd like to see Putin go right through them like a hot knife through butter and give them their comeuppance, because they've been bothering everybody in that region for years, the Armenians, the Turks, and several of the other countries that they bully around. And I'd love to see it. I think Trump could start a trend. McConnell, who cares what he says? He's gutless. And who cares what Lady Boy Graham says? Everybody knows what he is and what he's about. He needs to be replaced, just like so many of them. And I applaud Trump. I hope Trump can stick to his words, stick to his heart, and maybe we can bring about some kind of change.
Well, I'd like to see a peaceful change. There's no question about that. My concern is that this is being handled rather recklessly and dangerously, and that we're already hearing about, the conflict is underway. Turkey is attacking the Kurds. They're attacking the Syrian border crossings, and this could get seriously out of control. That's my concern. Anyway, Miles, we're going to let you go. We're going to switch over to Nancy. We're going to switch over to Nancy in Ohio. Aloha, Nancy. Well, Nancy, are you there? Hi, how you doing?
Yes, I am. Good. I have to say the same thing about Lenny. I always love to hear what he has to say. He's very knowledgeable. Makes a lot of sense. Why I'm calling is, a few weeks back, I talked to a person that's very knowledgeable on the Middle East. And
yes.
He said that we have a military sitting on the desert of Syria.
Yes.
And he said there's nothing there. It's just a desert.
Yes.
And he said, in outer space, we have technology that tells us where all the minerals are in the earth.
Yes.
And he said, Syria, where that army is sitting, has 74% of the purest silicon in the world. He said the United States only has about 34% of silicon.
Okay.
And he said that's why they're there, for the silicon.
Well, silicon is critical. I mean, it's needed for computer chips. It's needed for all kinds of modern electronics. It's not as important as the rare earth elements, but it's still definitely a strategic material.
Right. Right. And who are we there for? Who are we there for?
We're there for American commercial interests primarily, but it's sold to the American people that we're doing some kind of a humanitarian mission, that we're bringing these people democracy, that we're saving them from an evil dictator. Because if, our political leaders get up there in front of Congress and say, we're going to invade this other country because they got all kinds of rich stuff that our corporations want, the American people aren't going to go along with that way. And so we get 9/11 and we get Pearl Harbor and we get Gulf of Tonkin and we get the USS Maine.
Exactly. And back to Lenny and about the Republicans and why they don't do anything, because they're in bed with the same crooks that the Democrats are in bed with. Both parties are wings of the same bird. So that's why these things happen.
All right. Well, Nancy, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good day, Michael. And well, yeah, Michael, every one of your callers has been great today so far. I know somebody's going to call in and complain about Trump, but I will say this. Lenny hit it right on, and a lot of the other callers, the last lady and the other ladies before. Trump is doing the best he can with the situation he's involved in. And, she's right about the Democrats and Republicans all saying, look at Mitt Romney stabbing Trump at all costs. Colin Powell's a joke. That guy's a disgrace, that Colin Powell. And Michael, here in the Miami Herald, they had an article the other day, 2 days ago, about Kanye West, that he's an Uncle Tom because he supports Trump. And now
yes.
He's in the Herald, they have these editorialists calling Kanye a big-time Uncle Tom, backstabber to the blacks and all this because the guy supports Donald Trump. And, this guy seems like Trump can't cop a break for anything that he tries to do. They're attacking him left and right. You got that Adam Schiff. That guy should be put in prison for treason. And Pelosi, she should be put in treason alone, Michael, just for the immigration invasion of California and San Francisco for poop control. They got all these people going out picking up poop and picking up needles, putting boulders in between the spaces so these bums can't sleep on the sidewalks and they can't put their tents up. But here you got all this media attacking and they're all mostly homosexuals, by the way, on the Democratic controlled liberal media. You think Chuck Schmuck, he's from my South Florida. He's another. I can tell you all about that Chuck Todd and all these other criminals. And you got a couple on there on Fox News that are criminals like that Shepard Smith and whatever. Michael, it's just an absolute. And don't think Matt Drudge is all that hot either. Okay, that guy Drudge. I know exactly where he lives at. I've heard a lot of stories about Drudge. Okay, and I'm talking from people who actually met the guy. I personally know him real well. Listen.
Well, Drudge and I sort of parted company all the way back during the Vince Foster affair.
Well, yeah, Drudge is he's a wishy-washy fella. Let me tell you, I know where he goes. I don't want to go into that. I can tell you, but I'll tell you some other time. Listen, getting back to what I want to say about what Lenny and the last lady, another guy called. They were all absolutely right. I say pull out of Syria. We don't need that nonsense. Okay. A couple weeks ago, some guy called in. I think it was on your show about talking about the neutron bomb. The neutron bomb. We got neutron bombs. All we got to do is drop one of those. The buildings stand up. Everybody's dead, but the building's still there. What kind of? What, we talk about wars. What kind of wars are these? I'm hearing all this crap about war. Hey, we got neutron bombs, people. Okay, you know what a neutron bomb does? The Russians have it. I don't know about the Chinese, but I know the Russians and the United States have it. And if those two countries alone have it, that's too many. Okay? So the neutron bomb is the equalizer for everything on this earth as far as war goes. Okay? That's what I got to say. But also, Michael, Mitt Romney, this backstabbing moron, who he makes me so, I get so angry about Romney because this guy, he was like, during the 2012 election, he said he wanted to be president and all that. This guy was the biggest freaking hypocrite there ever was. And he stabbed Trump in the back constantly. It's disgusting. He never stood strong. None of these guys ever talked about immigration like Trump did when he says there's rapists coming here. Michael, you know what? You need to have an hour show talking about just bringing people from the angel mothers and fathers on your show. So let them tell you the experiences they had of losing a family member to an illegal alien. That's not what's going on in Syria, not what's going on with all these other Middle Eastern countries. They're 10,000 miles away. We're being invaded here when we get Americans murdered by these illegals. Okay, and I don't.
It's more than just that. Half the problems that we had with our move had to do with these refugees who come in here claiming to speak English but clearly do not. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Oh, hang on, Mike.
Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I want to clarify something here because I'm getting a lot of these phone calls from people saying, we should be out of Syria, we should be out of Turkey. And I'm in agreement with you, but here is my point. What is the exit strategy? How do we get out of these situations without causing more damage to our country? And I think the example I want to use for that is obviously Vietnam, because look how much psychological and international damage was done to the United States when we lost that war. And now we're talking about possibly losing the one in Syria. We're talking about losing the one that's up in Afghanistan. And I'd like to see us out of these wars, but I don't want us to see us coming out of these wars with the United States reputation basically being thrown into the shredder. Tom, are you there?
Michael, by the way, did you hear the breaking news? Omar filed for divorce from her husband in Minneapolis, and the husband's accusing her of adultery, committing adultery, and she's claiming he is having an affair, and he's claiming she was having an affair. That's on the news right now.
Ask me if I care.
Well, I'm just letting you know that's the breaking news on the news here. They're talking about he's accusing her, she's accusing him, and they're both supposedly Muslims and all that. Yeah, unbelievable. But getting back to Michael, getting back to immigration, okay? Yes, you're absolutely right. We're not hearing nothing from the media about these angel mothers and fathers, hardly ever. We know Molly Tibbetts is having her case heard this month, okay? And all we hear is about Middle East and what's going on with Syria, but you're not hearing about the invasion of the United States. Like we always talk about Texas going blue, Florida, they're trying everything they can, California's already gone, Arizona's going to be next. This is the real situation, people, we're facing. They are trying to burn this electorate. In other words, they're going to either win by the popular vote or they're going to win in the electoral college. And that's the Democrats, communist, Bolshevik modus of operandi. And that's all pumped up by George Soros and that criminal act element that he's involved with the Bolsheviks.
Yeah.
However, they want to keep talking, oh, Trump's going to pull Syria. Hey, listen, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, Afghanistan, Syria, Pakistan, they can all blow themselves, okay? Let them blow up each other because we don't need to be there, and I don't know why we were there in the first place, tell you the truth, okay?
We were there for the mineral wealth.
The guy
we were there for geopolitical control. Okay.
The other day, the guy saying that the Christians do more crime than the Muslims, the Arabs, the Middle Easterns, middle people from the Middle East. Is this guy for real? No way. I don't buy that. Okay? Yeah, there's bad Christians, absolutely. I'm not going to say they're Mr. Pretty, goody-goody two-shoes. But you know what? In the last 200 years, I can tell you the Christians haven't done as much as the Muslims as far as nonsense. Well, yeah, the Christians went to war with each other in Germany and all that nonsense because we know how that was pumped up. Hitler wasn't even a German. He was born in Austria from, who his father was. Amazing.
You had the Crusades, you had the Inquisition, which my family was a victim of, and you had the witch hunts. I'm sorry, there are good and bad people in all religions. And
absolutely.
Okay. All right. Anyway, listen, Tom, got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. We're going to go back to the phones here to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, Trump did do a good thing by this, but Trump does own as many flip-flops as John Kerry. So until we actually see troops leaving, but that doesn't mean Blackwater/XC/Academy and Purple Shovel are there arming these jihadis still. The troops leaving don't mean anything because they have a proxy army still over there in Idlib.
Yes.
So
like I said, I want to see what the actual exit strategy is. How are we going to get out of this mess without it remaining a mess?
But Mike, I have to disagree with you. I agree with you 99%, but I not disagree with you, but you say, how do we not lose credibility? But we've lost credibility a long time ago, so it doesn't matter if we lose it now. You know what I mean? We are an empire run by an oligarchy, and the Kurds are just on a chessboard, a geopolitical chessboard, So they'll be tossed over the side like they were many times before. And this government, I have to say the oligarchy running it, the Mitch McConnells, they don't give a crap about us. What makes everybody think they give a crap about the Kurds? They don't care about the Syrian people. They armed jihadis that threw women and children down wells.
Yes.
They don't care. They just care about the end game of the geopolitical chess game. That's it. You know, so
yeah, it's all about winning. It's all about the acquisition of wealth. It's all about the acquisition of power. And like I said earlier in the show, the problem is money junkiism. The fact that these people are literally addicted to great amounts of wealth, more wealth than any one person could actually reasonably comfortably need.
And I got to go back, Tom, again, you said, who cares if the Middle East blows themselves up? But we've created this, us meaning the West and our governments of the West, Britain, France, have created the mess over there, which we pitted Sunni versus Shia and all these other groups against each other, which we shouldn't have gone there in the first place. Anybody show me in the Constitution as a republic where it says anything what we're doing? We're doing what the British Empire has done throughout the history of the British Empire around the world, in China.
You're exactly
and
right.
We're doing the same thing. Yeah.
You're exactly right. They carved up the Ottoman Empire and they turned it into a bunch of little tiny countries they could turn against each other.
And the same's being done here, Mike, by our own elements of our own government to pit people against each other. You know, like with the refugees over in Europe, they're causing them to be fighting against each other. So it's all.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Tom's right with George Soros and all that. Like, there's a chess game going on around the world, and that's all I gotta say, Mike. Have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here, and we're going to switch to Robert in California. Aloha, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
A lot, Mike, but I'm afraid I'm a little bit behind. You're a couple of topics ahead of me. I was talking about the Marines here and the Posse Comitatus and this new order that Trump just signed. Do you still have time for that?
Yeah, I still have time for that, but we don't know who signed the order. It was ostensibly signed by the Brigadier General.
I understand that part.
Okay, all right.
No, I totally understand that part. Yeah, I've gotten that pretty clear. I was actually calling a couple of buddies of mine who were in the Marines, and I have a next door neighbor in his late 60s who was a Marine way back in the day.
Yeah.
And so I got into a conversation with these folks, and each one of the three had a different thing to say because they're from three different generations. But the irony is that none of them had anything to be able to explain to me clearly as to why the Marines are the only branch of government that's allowed to operate on home soil. And I approached each one of the three with another question. I said, what would happen if you were active and you were suddenly stationed home soil for a particular duty that might, you know, work against the populace? What would you do? And hands down, every one of them said, you know what, I would break my orders. I'm not going to do that.
Well, the reason the Marines, the reason the Marines are not under that limitation is because they're part of the Navy. And under the original Constitution,
I totally understand the entire history behind that. Yeah,
there's no standing army.
That earlier in the show, I would allow you to tell the listeners about this, but you were just talking about that earlier in the show, and I hope they were listening. Yes. And you were spot on. Yeah, you were absolutely spot on. See, the thing is that I'm kind of going to give this an opinion piece status, I guess, as it were, but I'm kind of wondering, and nobody has discussed this yet, but is there a chance, perhaps, that Trump is activating the Marines on home soil because of that little speech he gave the other day right before he hopped in his chopper? And he was talking about, this isn't about politics, I'm going after corruption. Is there a chance maybe that all these Marines are going to be stationed to make sure that we've got enough manpower available to arrest all these asshats? I mean, am I allowed to say
I would love to see it. I would absolutely love to see it.
So would
I don't see Trump as having the moral strength to do that. And I don't see the Supreme Court.
Really? Why not? No, I would love to hear why you think he wouldn't have the Go ahead.
I think he's a weak leader. I've been thinking he's a weak leader all along. The other question would be, would the Supreme Court allow him to get away with that? I mean, he would have to basically declare a national emergency and martial law in order to do that. And maybe you may be right. Maybe that's what he's planning on doing.
I don't know, but Hey, speaking of the Supreme Court, what is this about Clarence Thomas being really ill and nobody's talking about it? Now the Supreme Court is going back into session without him. Does that have any play in this?
I heard about that. I heard that he was not doing well. And I've heard that Ruth Bader Ginsburg isn't doing very well. And right now, the Democrats are in an absolute panic that the court could go back to being 7-2 conservative.
Panic? Are you kidding? They look like a cat in a burlap sack right now, man.
Yes.
They don't look good. This does not look good for the Democrats, but it doesn't look good for the rest of us either because the Democrats have an atomic switch. That's the problem here. Yep. You know, we're looking at a country that is so fragile right now, and I don't even know exactly how to react. I would love to, you know, I've been calling my senators, I've been calling my congressmen, I've been calling my city council, you know, folks, and nobody wants to listen. Most of them just, you know, start drooling and snoring and put me on hold, and it's getting ridiculous, man. But, you know, when I look at the bigger picture, when I kind of just step back to 30,000 feet altitude and take a look at the real big perspective here, we're in a world of stuff right now.
We are.
Get the adult language out of this.
No question about it. No question.
So how do we respond? How do I, as a little person out here in California, and how do you, as a little person out there in Indiana, right? You guys just moved in, right?
Well, we're moving in,
so a little
yes.
person like me out in California and a little person like you out in Indiana, what do we do about this?
We wait it out.
Do?
We wait it out. All empires, listen, all empires fall. Gandhi used to say exactly the same thing. All empires fall. We saw that with Rome. We saw that with the Soviet Union. We're going to see it here in the United States of America. The key is for us to all work together and survive that. And I'm sorry because that's the only advice that I have. Because
that you and I were at 3 months ago, right? We're at the same result you and I were at 3 months ago when I called in. I would love to be able to try to fix this country, but it's too broken to continue, and we all need to hunker down and do the Bert the Turtle story, right?
Well, I don't know about Bert the Turtle. That was a piece of propaganda to
he was
convince us.
Such a great guy. I loved Bert the Turtle.
I love Bert the Turtle too, but he was created to convince the American people nuclear wars were winnable. Okay, but I'm not going to sit here and advocate, you know, a revolution or a civil war in this country because the wrong people are going to get killed.
I'm so glad that you stand up in that respect, Mike, because I don't advocate for that either. But what I am looking for is a reasonable solution that us adults can get on board with. I mean, there are a lot of people out here that really want to do something and create a positive change within the government. A lot of people understand what's gone wrong.
Yes.
I mean, we're pretty clear on that. We see it on a daily basis, and each and every one of us are waiting for, I don't know, I mean, I hate to say it, I'm kind of just this guy on the couch or the guy who's too busy working every day to be able to make a podcast of his own, but we're waiting on you folks to give us a solution as to how to proceed to try to stop this before it really
maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe Trump is bringing up the Marines because he's basically going to declare a national emergency and say, look, they're all corrupt and we're going to send them all down to Guantanamo.
I hope I'm right about that, man, because I feel like I'm the only person speculating about that. I haven't heard it from any other source out there online, and I really hope that a few other people start kind of just tossing this idea around and give me a little bit of hypothetical opinion back. I really want to hear other people's opinions about this because, well, I guess it's all opinion right now. None of us really know.
Well, it's an opinion right now. I mean, I would love to see it.
Really screwed up.
I would love to be there on the dock at Guantanamo when Frog marched off that boat, and I would want to be there with the biggest, rottenest tomato I could find.
Hey, I've got a kayak and a big tomato, but I'm on the wrong coast.
Oh,
I'd love
okay.
to be there too.
Well, I'm not on the coast at all right now. I'm sitting on the middle of a lake. All right, well, listen, Robert, we're going to let you go here. We've got callers piling up on the line here, so let's switch to Steve in Indiana. Aloha, Steve. Aloha, neighbor. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I got two things for you.
Yeah.
First, I want to kind of respond to the last caller. I'm a former U.S. Marine and also a current U.S. government employee.
Okay.
And I just want to tell you that the mood within a lot of the service people that I know, especially the ones that are in the Northern Virginia, D.C. area, is we're tired of this crap. We're not just going to march in like in 2001, when they did the false flag for 9/11. We're not. That mood is gone. People are beginning to react. They know that all this stuff is a false flag. All this stuff happening is false flags.
We're being lied to. We're being lied to. Absolutely, no question.
The reaction is way faster now than it ever was. People know what's going on. A lot of people, and the Marines, the ex-Marines, Navy. If I'm ever at the VA, when I hear them talking, they laugh. They're not going to go. They're not going to get themselves called back to these wars. They just won't go. And what they want is more money for their disabilities and the veteran programs and stuff. They don't want any part of this all these crappy wars and stuff. So your callers need to know that. Now the second thing I got is the most important thing. Because I listened to a show with the vanquished Saudi journalists this weekend. Really good show. And he says that if Iran is totally ready for war with Israel and the United States. And he said one of the things that people aren't talking about that will happen if Iran is attacked is Iran will attack both the Saudi Arabian and Israeli desalinization plants and wipe out the water supply.
Yes.
And he said if that happens, it'll cost 3 times as much to rebuild those desalinization plants as it would any oil infrastructure. So he said he doesn't see a war happening. Well, obviously because Donald Trump would not get reelected for sure if he attacked Iran. But he said if an attack does come, he said look for both Israel's coastal and Saudi Arabia's coastal desalinization plants to be attacked and destroyed. Because if they can do what they did with those drones to the oil, think what they could do to the desalinization plants.
That would be a problem.
One other quick thing too. I called Ron Johnson's office today and applauded him. I called him both on his DC number and his Wisconsin number, and I would encourage your listeners to give a call, and even if they leave a recorded message of support for Johnson, telling it how it was, that he doesn't trust the CIA and the FBI. And, the CIA and FBI are both, they're not organic parts of the United States. They were created to protect the corporations.
Yes.
And like you said, it's the money junkie thing. It's all tied back to that. The CIA, they've done nothing to help us with Epstein. There've been no arrest. Ghislaine Maxwell is still not arrested. They haven't really, went down and investigated any of his properties or anything. So
well, that's not entirely accurate. That's not entirely accurate. The FBI went down and examined his island in the Caribbean, but by the time they got there, it had already been emptied out. So the big question we have here right now is how many of these higher-ups in FBI and CIA got caught in these honey traps, and who's got the data right now? Because, we now know from a former Israeli intelligence officer that this was all set up by Israel to entrap powerful Americans and bring them under Israel's control.
Exactly. And Mike, do you know anything about this guy, Mark John Dugan? This guy that's escaped to Russia, asked for asylum? Because apparently he is on a couple of shows this weekend saying that he has tapes of actually film tapes, video of these people visiting, Epstein's place.
Well, I think that stuff ought to come on out. I think the safest way that we can defuse the entire situation is to just expose them all and say, look, these guys did all of this. It's now over and done with. Israel can't use that to control them any longer. And, we were talking last week about this situation where Epstein was making all these very generous donations to academic institutions and inviting people like Stephen Hawking down to his island. And it turned out the reason why was because all of his billionaire friends wanted access to these brilliant minds looking for little bits of science that would be the next great the next great economic accomplishment. And they didn't go down there intending to be with the young girls, but the girls were there anyway, and nature took its course, and the whole thing was set up basically to blackmail American politicians. And the big question is, how many of them fell for this? We certainly know Bill Clinton did. We know Prince Andrew did. And I'd like to know who's got all of this information right now, because they're still in a position to control the U.S. government.
Absolutely. They're also don't they run Amdocs, and then the British, they run Serco, which is the U.S. Patent Office. I mean, this is crazy. Most Americans don't even know that the British is in charge of the U.S. Patent Office, so they get to see all the new inventions and
yeah, I know.
Patented before.
I know. Israel runs Amdocs. Israel runs Converse Infosys. They were running this spy ring, the largest foreign spy ring ever found in this country, just before 9/11. It's completely crazy, and our government won't do a thing about it.
Mike, I'm gonna let you go. Good topics, man. The U.S. Marines don't want to be involved in these wars. At least the ones that are retired and.
Good for them.
The ones I know, they're not. Yeah. All right. Take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Errol in the Netherlands. Aloha, Errol. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Oh, wait a minute. We got to take a break for commercials. Errol, stay on the line. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I cannot tell you how important it is right now that Republic Broadcasting stay on the air. You can see right now, these are very dark and dangerous and chaotic times. The chaos seems to be building. Those of us who want to know the truth, those of us who want to share the truth, need to keep finding a way to do so. So again, you can go to the top of the RBN website, and there's a little place you can donate. Our heartfelt thanks to those of you who have donated. And again, thanks to those of you who are about to donate. All right, getting on back to the phones here. Errol in the Netherlands. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Mike. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Very interesting is the new, how do you call it? The people that want to say for global warming, that have the flag. So I was by my mother. My mother is 82 years old now.
Yes.
So I said to my mother, I said, "What is that flag?" So I was analyzing that flag. What do you think where the flag came from? It was from George Soros.
Yes.
George Soros, yes, made that 11 months ago. So
yes.
George Soros created a new sort of, how do you call it? La La Land. I call it La La Land.
Good name
people.
for it.
With a flag, yeah. I was like, what the hell is this? Did you see this?
Yeah, I did. And, he's out there, he's funding this Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, exactly.
He's still out here pushing this human-caused global warming. We've got record cold coming in this winter here. Apparently, over 16,000 people froze to death in Great Britain last winter. And they're still out there insisting that the planet is warming and that we all have to buy carbon credits and, get rid of our paper bags.
Mike, again. They don't know because I made an how do you call it? I made I said to them, how many times does the sun does the Earth fit into the sun? It's 1.3 million times.
Yes.
They don't. Yes, but they don't think about it because. And I said, like, don't you think that the sun has anything to do with the Earth?
Yes.
I mean, in the sense of changing things. The sun.
Well, I mean, you've got NASA. NASA is now out there.
Exactly.
NASA is now out there saying that yes, Earth's temperature is controlled by orbital perturbations and solar radiation. So even NASA has abandoned this whole, human-caused global warming nonsense.
It's amazing that it's amazing or not?
It's very alarming how gullible Americans have become.
Thank you for taking my call and have a nice day.
All right, same to you. Thank you very much. Well, apparently, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I'm sorry, we've got Dave in Ohio. Dave, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Trying to stay on topic here, but it's kind of hard because the calls get backed up. But with all the stuff that's going on, what I'm not hearing publicized too much is that there's another equivalent of a quantitative easing going on to the tune that the Fed is putting in something like $75 billion a day.
More than that.
Banks. Okay. But, we're not hearing much about that. And this was supposed to end, I believe, originally around the 10th of the month. And now, what I'm hearing is going to be extended
yes.
at least for another month, if not longer. And I'm just wondering how long the government or the Fed actually can keep doing this. What's going to happen to us as a middle class?
What's going to happen is they're going to keep on doing this, going to keep on printing up the ink and the paper and trying to get the rest of the world to use it until the rest of the world says, look, this stuff is worthless. It is completely worthless. And, at that point, the U.S. economy will collapse. Now, many years ago, I actually had a collection of currencies from around the world, all of them from governments that had collapsed their own economies. And I gave it away to a museum. I don't even remember who got it now. But it was just these huge frames with all of these very pretty little bills, very nice artwork. And it was all these currencies that had simply evaporated in value.
I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm wondering, in the scheme of things, that people should realize there are a lot of veterans in this country who took an oath to defend their Constitution against enemies without and within, and I'm kind of afraid of a lot of them still take that oath seriously.
Well, I have to be very honest. I don't know the oath of the Marines. I do know that it is the oath of the President of the United States of America to preserve, protect the air.
Yeah, Mike, I was
I was just going to mention the thing that bothers me about Trump is that I think he's, I think he's playing the kind of the crazy person, crazy uncle routine, but he's got a loaded gun, And I just, you remember when he fired those Tomahawk missiles at Syria into some empty lot or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
he hit the airfield, but he didn't hit anything important.
Right, he knew exactly what was going on there. Spent a lot of money, helped the military-industrial complex for a few dollars. But the thing that concerns me the most is that, it's like a crazy person on the street, with a 357 Magnum, and he's threatening to shoot everybody. Sometimes, sooner or later, somebody's going to take him up and, fire back. And that, unless he's on the line with Putin and, Xi and everybody, he's risking this game that, he just said he's going to obliterate.
I agree. That's absolutely the root of my concern with all of this.
Yeah. Do you think, when I was asking you, Mike, do you think he's talking to Erdogan and saying, listen, I'm going to say this stupid shit and, don't think it's serious? I mean, I kind of think that's probably what's going on because that's crazy. You could start a war with Pakistan and, India could fire at each other and it could start but do you think, in your opinion, that they're talking, amongst themselves saying, listen, don't take me seriously. I'm going to talk crazy, but I'm not going to do anything. I mean, do you think that's what's really going on?
It's already happening. I mean, Turkey is already bombing Syrian border crossings. They're bombing the Kurds. I think this is on for real. And I think Trump has just decided that he's got to start showing everybody that he's this tough guy because, unfortunately, he's acquired this reputation of being a little bit of a weak leader. And I know I'm one of the people who's out there pushing that, but that's the way he comes across. So I think maybe he's just decided I'm going to go on out there and prove that I put on the presidential brass knuckles, which can be a good thing, but it can backfire. And what we're waiting to do is to see what Iran does, what Russia does, and what ISIS does.
Oh, Mike, I don't want to keep you on the phone because I got commercials and other people calling in, but maybe this has something to do with his small hands.
Maybe we could make the brass knuckles larger. Could make the brass knuckles larger.
Hey, by the way, I don't know, Mike. This is just, oh my gosh, this is, if he's not on the line with these people, he could spark a nuclear war. This couldn't happen 100 years ago. This is something new. And, like you said, this is the basis of your program, basically. Yeah. And you're right. You avoid a nuclear war by waking people up. But listen on just a real quick side note here. This Officer Ritter that bought out all the Epstein stuff in Palm Beach, he died like he was 50 years old in perfect shape. He died mysteriously, and he turned over all his tapes, all on a thumb drive or whatever, to this one of your callers called into this Dugan guy that fled to Russia, and supposedly he's got him in 10 different locations, and that's his dead man switch. But,
so now Russia has got all of this blackmail information on American politicians. Oh, that just makes things much more wonderful.
Possibly, I don't know. He's saying they don't, but he's saying he's got it in 10 different locations, and he's got all the Epstein videotapes. Mm-hmm. This guy's credible. He's an ex-Marine that was trying to do the right thing. One of your callers, brought it up.
Yeah,
Mark Duke. So it's pretty crazy. But anyways, I thought I'd throw that in, Mike, and keep up the good work. I'll let you get to the rest of your callers. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much there. And we're going to switch over to Todd in Long Beach. Aloha, Todd. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike, for taking my call. I'll give you a little report from my trip to Yosemite, and it is quite astounding. I've been going there for 20 years, and I've seen, I think we're going to lose the park. I think we're going to lose it. Right now, it's being hit with a white fungus. And what it does is it hits groups of 5 trees. And at the valley floor, I've never seen so much devastation in all my life. Now, they're saying that the trees grew too fast and the base did not grow wide enough. I can see that, especially when you see the trees that have fallen over. And I remember some of those trees I was able to see Half Dome quite a bit. Now, I have a lot of pictures that I took this trip, and I'm going to send you one of where the creek is between the Backpackers Creek next to Washington's Column and Pines. And when you see the creek, it's so mind-blowing to see this, the change. And these forest fires, I just know they have got to be set, okay? It's just something inside me says that Bull Scrodato is big time the word of the day for BLM and our rangers. And also, you know, I do keep a close watch on my 2 when I'm there because, as you know, David Pauldis has pointed out, that is one of the highest abducted people of all ages, all religions, everything in the United States is Yosemite Park. It's very mystical. You go up there to Glacier Point and you can see deep, deep back into the high Sierras and see the snowfields and the glaciers. And there is something very special about that place, guaranteed. This year and last year, unfortunately, super flooded with people. Thank God I left at a good time. I have timing, so I know when everything is going to happen, that I know when to get in and out. We stopped up in Tuolumne Meadows. Not the same up there, not the same devastation. So I'm wondering if this white fungus has any relation to the chemtrailing, and if so, why not the higher elevations? And my suspicion is that the wind is much higher up there, and the aluminum and all the other crap that's in the chemtrail would not have the opportunity to basically lay on the trees and
first of all, let's back up here a little bit and remember that nature is constant change. It never stays the same. You're dealing with new life forms that are coming along, including this white fungus. You're dealing with the changing geology of the region.
The biology in college, but haven't we heard trees are not supposed to die? That, functionally, they only die by a disease, and that sometimes it seems
they can burn to death.
Disease. Yeah, oh yes, they can do that. Lack of water and all that, but that's all part of disease, isn't it? I mean, lack of nutrients, same with us, is disease. Your body starts, lack of vitamin C, you get rickets. Same thing.
I don't know that botanists would actually consider an absence of hydrology to be considered a disease, because diseases are infectious, and in this case you're simply dealing with the lack of a critical supply. Anyway, listen, Todd, we're going to let you go, and we got to switch over here to Peter in Los Angeles, who's been waiting very, very patiently. So, Peter, what's on your mind?
Mike, can you hear me? I'm in my car.
I hear you just fine.
I never call back. So but let me tell you that the oath of the commissioning oath is the same for all services. Preserve and protect the Constitution from all. So all commissioned officers, it's universal. Naval Service, Air Force, Army, you name it. And by the way, the Marine Corps is now separate from the Navy. Also,
yes,
Brigadier General Mike, he is not the person that initiates the order. He's the person whose office executes it, who actually cuts the paperwork and distributes it. But that order would have to come, since this is reserves. If it had been a state thing, for the governor would have to do it for the guard, right? But this would have to come from the National Command Authority. This Brigadier General is just some bureaucrat functionary that actually bureaucratically cuts the order. It would, all right, so this comes from above. Joint Chiefs, Secretary of Defense, President, National Security Council. So,
boy, I'm wondering if that other caller is correct that that Trump's about to put on the presidential brass knuckles and start arresting some of these people. I'd like to see it happen.
Mike,
I think we're long overdue.
When I called you earlier and talked about how it's the secret police that are behind this impeachment, this coup thing, that's where I was getting at.
Okay.
So, yeah, hopefully it will, So that's it.
Well, time will solve that mystery. Time will solve that mystery. Okay. I guess we lost Peter. Let's switch over to Richard in New York. Aloha, Richard. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Your last caller pretty much nailed what this administrative guidelines actually are. And I don't want to beat this to death. This is not an order for anything. It is entitled specifically that they are manpower guidelines, for whenever the reserves are activated and then deactivated, due to some national emergency. Now, what the people have done who have put out this huge rumor that this is an actual order to activate Marine Corps reservists and individual ready reserve Marines has been totally blown out of proportion. They have cherry-picked this document, which is simply an updated version of an earlier such guideline. And, this is all done under Title 10 and submitted under, under the USC as code. And he's exactly right. General Shipley is the Director of Manpower Plans and Policy. He serves directly under the Commandant of the Marine Corps and reports directly to him. Okay, so this is simply a guideline in case of activation. And it also mentions that similar requirements are mentioned for Air Force, Army, and Navy personnel also. This has nothing to do with President Trump activating the Marine Corps Reserves. Absolutely not. And this originates from Steve Quayle, David Hodges, Mike Adams, and now Alex Jones has taken it up, and they are going to look terrible when this blows up in their face. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, that would be kind of fun to watch happen here. But again, why particularly now? And again, it just feels like between this Brigadier General, you've got Turkey is now bombing the heck out of the Kurds. They're bombing the Syrian border crossings. And you have to wonder, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, well, I'd agree with you on the timing here. However,
the timing is a little suspicious.
It is a little suspicious, but this is nothing more than what it is. It's an administrative guideline that's, you could go right now to Marines.com and pull the order up yourself and look through it, and you will discover that these people have pulled certain sections out. They have literally changed words around. They have left out sections that involve the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force. And they just they're using it to create a lot of hype and a lot of unnecessary concern.
Okay.
And, they're just using this poor timing with this document to do what they do. And these people have a history of putting this stuff out. In fact, I remember in either 2010 or 2012, Quayle said that there were thousands of Chinese troops with armored vehicles being stationed in Mexico, as well as
I remember that one.
300,000 Russian Spetsnaz secreted in places all over the United States preparing for an invasion. Now,
I remember that one
either. So this is what we're dealing with, Mike. It's nothing. It really is nothing.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call and the information and the update and the calming voice. And I'm in agreement with those who were calling earlier, just saying that, Alex Jones seems to be going tabloid. He's going sensationalist. And maybe he's just out there trying to build his audience, because we'd all like a larger audience, to get more advertisers and more revenue. But there are things that we're not going to do to accomplish that at RBN. And that's kind of where we are. All righty, so our phone lines are open right now. We're getting close to the end of the show. And getting on back to the news here. This kind of an interesting little story. Apparently, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez faced an awkward moment during a town hall meeting last Thursday evening when a woman stood up and said it was time to start eating babies, meaning human babies, to save the planet from imminent climate-induced doom. Now, the first thing that occurred to me when I read this article is that this woman was either a nutcase or a plant. Basically create this situation so that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez could get some ink. There's a lot of that goes on. Apparently, okay, I just got a confirmation from Ken in the control room. She was a troll from the... So, yeah, that definitely confirms that. All righty, Robert De Niro is once again in trouble. He's being accused of abuse by a former employee. And he allegedly abused, sexually harassed, threatened, and underpaid his former personal assistant, according to a lawsuit she filed citing years of gender discrimination and harassment. So Graham Chase Robinson, De Niro's personal assistant for 11 years, take note, is suing the actor for $12 million, claiming he created a hostile work environment and subjected her to mental and physical harassment in a discrimination complaint filed Thursday in a federal court. I'm sorry, she stayed with this guy for 11 years, claiming that he was treating her this way? I'm sorry, I'm calling bull biscuits on this one. That doesn't make sense. All right, we got to take a break here for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today. And last Friday, I put up this article here. And it was basically from the Gateway Pundit, cities across the United States deploying police amid fears of attacks during the Joker debut. New Joaquin Phoenix film out there, basically a repackaging of the Joker, who was the supervillain from the Batman movies. And so they're talking about how Los Angeles police have promised a high visibility presence around cinemas to ease fears that the latest big screen comic book adaptation will ignite deadly violence. New York City plans to do exactly the same. And the first thing I thought when I read this is a PR stunt. This is pure public relations, and as it turned out, I was correct, because if you read the reviews for Joker, you'll spot the very obvious bought and paid for ones about what a wonderful movie it is, but overwhelmingly the critics are saying this is a stinker. And it's certainly filled with gratuitous violence, which appears to be its one selling point, but it doesn't seem to have any thematic content or any real storyline. It's just beat, hit, beat, cut, beat, hit. And that's a horrible, horrible movie, in my opinion, coming out of my background on all of this. So yeah, it was a PR stunt. And you'll see that happen all the time, where you'll get Hollywood studios getting involved with local governments, with schools, with football teams, and they'll stage these stunts just to get publicity, get their name in the media. I remember when the Russians flew this giant inflatable Coca-Cola can on the their space station, and I mean, it was just utterly, utterly ridiculous. So you have to be very careful what you're looking at on the news, because a lot of it is lies. We already know that. And a lot of it is just flat out manufactured to get you thinking in a certain direction, to get you to buy a certain product, to get you to go on out and have a certain political point of view, to go on out and eat your dead babies to save the world from human-caused global warming. I mean, that one was a little bit out there. And as I said earlier in the show, it is very troubling to me how the American people seem to be getting at this day and age. And I think we need to develop a healthy skepticism, that we need to stop being as gullible, to stop just believing what the corporate media and the government tell us to believe, because after all, we've been lied to so many times. How many more times are you going to be lied to before you say, hey, I'm being lied to? Anyway, there's the music. It's time for me to get on out of here. Please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of wonderful things to share with you on this wonderful Monday. And please spread the word of RBN. We need to grow our audience. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. I need to grow my audience. I've got, I think, 3 people so far. Please donate, and we'll be back tomorrow. So have yourself a good evening, and have a good evening.